My name's Umar Farooq and I'm a journalist based in Istanbul, Turkey. I got a grant from the Pulitzer Center to study the effort to mainstream the tribal areas in Pakistan. The idea of collective punishment is sort of common in the news today, but there's very few places in the world where the idea is actually written into the law. One of those places is the tribal areas in Pakistan. Although we often read about them in the news, I think we often get a pretty superficial idea of what happens there. Usually it's about a drone strike and some Al-Qaeda leader being killed there, or some military operation that's happening. But I wanted to sort of go beyond that and to see what life is like for people on the ground. The tribal areas, or the Federally Administered Tribal Areas as they're called officially, are sort of a unique historical artifact. When Pakistan was made into its own country in 1947, FATA was sort of given an autonomous status. And what that meant was that while it was considered part of the country, most of Pakistan's laws didn't apply there. There's no police there. Instead, the area is governed by the frontier crimes regulations. Now, these are a set of laws that the British colonial rulers put in place more than a century ago. And the idea was that the tribes would be left to themselves. So if it was an issue about distributing land or what to do with a thief or a murderer, the tribesmen themselves would get together and they would decide what to do. When it came to the state only got involved when it needed to assert its own control. So if the tribesmen attacked a government official, if they robbed a government convoy or something, then the state could get involved. And in that case, the Frontier Crimes Regulations allows the state to impose collective punishment. So what that means is if one member of a tribe committed a crime against the state, then the state can take all kinds of punitive measures against the entire tribe. They can burn the houses down of any of the tribal members, they can send them into exile, they can blockade an entire area, they can shut down all of the tribe's businesses. So this system sounds like it might work well because it gives autonomy to the people living there, but what happened after 2001 is that we had non-state actors moving into the tribal areas. We had Al-Qaeda, we had the Taliban, coming from Afghanistan, and some of them already based in Pakistan, that all went to the tribal areas because there was a vacuum of authority there. Now, these actors didn't care about collective punishment. So every IED blast, every soldier that was kidnapped, every suicide attack that was traced to the tribal areas resulted in homes being demolished, resulted in entire tribes being sent into exile, sort of collective punishment on a mass scale, which had been going on for the last 16 years in Pakistan, but which I think wasn't ever really captured in the story in the sense that it should have been captured. Almost everyone in FATA has been touched by this law at some point or another. Even though the story of FATA and what's happening to the tribal people hasn't been told the way it should have been told and the way it should have been covered in Pakistan and in the international media, the thing that attracted me to it is that the local people there, they haven't given up. They've been, in the last few years especially, they've organized protests, they've organized alliances across political parties, parties that would never sit at the same table in the rest of Pakistan. They've come together, and students have organized themselves, and they've come together to sort of put one message forward to Pakistan and to the rest of the world that this way of collectively punishing millions of people is not viable, in this day and age. And the other idea that they keep putting forward is that this is the reason that this area became a safe haven for Al-Qaeda, for the Taliban. So, for example, if the United States wants to stabilize Afghanistan, it needs to look at the federally administered tribal areas, and it needs to ensure that the people there have a viable state governing that area. They need to have police, they need to have schools, they need to have judges, they need to have proper jails, all of the things that you can have, all of the institutions to make sure that non-state actors and militant groups aren't able to find a vacuum to flourish like they did in the tribal area.